time to pay for your sins.
It's America's new scream queen.
Maxine fucking Minx.
Let's talk about Maxine and its ending. This is the finale to the trilogy that Ty West and Mia Goth started back with X in 2022. Let me tell you, as somebody who has been a fan of Ty since The House of the Devil, I was excited to hear they were coming back to make a new horror film. Little did I know they were making a trilogy that I think is going to be one of those trilogies that's looked back on and says, hey, they did amazing with that. But let's get into my thoughts on the ending. Like I said, this is the weakest for me in the X trilogy, but I still want to talk about it because I think it's still a great film. Even though it's the weakest in the trilogy, one has to be the lowest one, but for me, it's Maxine. And my ranking's actually X, Pearl, and Maxine, and we'll talk about that in another video. Let's get into the ending of Maxine, what it meant, and what I thought about it. So before we get any further into it, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. We are on the road to 35,000 subscribers. We just hit 31,000 yesterday. Big goal, honestly, and I want to thank each and every one of you. We're currently moving on to just talking about long legs now. We've done a ton of Maxine videos in the past, and so if you're into long legs, check out our videos as well. But let's get into the finale of Maxine and how that all came to be. The film starts off as Maxine as a young girl being filmed by her father. As we know, Maxine comes from this very religious sect cult of sort, and we see that the father's really pushing for Maxine to sort of be the successor to him and lead the church. Of course, we know that's not going to happen after the events of X. It seems Maxine ran away from that life and is trying now to be a star. We see then Maxine audition for The Puritan 2, which is a horror film that comes from the first film, The Puritan, which starred Molly Bennett, who is played by Lily Collins, and that became a pretty big hit. Now you have a director, Elizabeth Bender, making the sequel, and she auditions for them and does an amazing job, honestly. We see that Maxine this whole time now is in Hollywood, has been working as a sex worker, which includes doing porn, being in a strip club, and also working at a peep show. At said peep show, we see that the Night Stalker is stalking Maxine here. The Night Stalker has been terrorizing Hollywood and Los Angeles now for a good while, as we learn from police reports and news stations. And this is, of course, based on the real life Night Stalker, the whole thing that happened in the 80s, and that's a whole other video right there. We ultimately see that Maxine ends up landing the role of the Puritan 2, which has her a bit excited now that she's finally going to be able to transition away from this life she's been living for this while now and go into the limelight of Hollywood. Maxine has a couple of friends played by Halsey and Moses, and it's pretty much what's keeping her, I would say, solid and not really having her PTSD act up. That is until one day her PTSD really starts ramping up. This is after, of course, Halsey's death, which is one of the first ones we see. And I just want to say, everybody in this film, even some of them that had less than a couple of minutes of screen time, did amazing here, especially Halsey. I was really impressed by everybody and how they were able to manage just being in the film a little. But we see that Halsey and one of other Maxine's colleagues end up going to this like Hollywood Hills type party, and that's where they ultimately get picked off by a cult, it seems. And we see that the Night Stalker is there because they're wearing this like leather glove all the time and stuff. And it was a very tense moment, I will say. That scene when Halsey and the other friend get killed was just very eerie, and I was already like, oh man, this is about to be a peak movie when those scenes came on, because it was creepy and scary as hell. Gave me some Peeping Tom vibes, a lot of Hitchcockian vibes in this film as well, for real, especially towards the end, and I'll talk about that in a bit. But we ultimately see that these two girls end up dead, and that's when the LAPD gets involved, which of course are Bobby Cannavale and Michelle Monaghan, and they start to want to question Maxine about what she knows about what happened to them and all that. But Maxine is uncooperative and doesn't want to do anything besides her being in the Puritan 2. Ultimately, we see that Maxine's other friend Moses gets picked off by the Night Stalker, and this is when Maxine really starts to hit rock bottom, I feel, especially considering that everybody around her is getting killed and she's dealing with trying to be good in this film. Elizabeth Bender, at this point, the director played by Elizabeth Debicki, already told her, you have to stand out because the studio and production don't want you in this because they think it's bad press if a sex worker is in the film, so you have to put it all, honestly. So she's dealing with all of that, and then she ends up meeting Molly Bennett on the set, who is played by Lily Collins, who tells her that she just has to stand out and has to pretty much be front and center, and she'll make it. She'll be that it girl at one point as well. All of that happening, you have her friends being killed by this Night Stalker, you have her stressing about this role, you have her having the PTSD from the farm and X, and also add on to that Kevin Bacon as this sleazy private detective who is trying to get Maxine set up with the Night Stalker, because we find out that they're working together. Kevin Bacon's character knows what's going on here, and he's really just doing it because of the money. Like he says, he's a whore for money. So we see that he is ultimately chasing her down as well in the backlot studio, which was very cool to see them use the Psycho house. Ty West said that they were able to use the actual house that is in the Universal backlot, which was very cool, honestly, in my opinion. We see also that they are sending Maxine the videos of the Texas porn star video they shot as well, so they know pretty much everything about Maxine here, and Maxine's trying to figure out who this ultimately could be, but she has to get Kevin Bacon's character in check first. So she calls up her agent, who is played by Giancarlo, to be like, hey, we gotta take out this guy, you gotta help me because he's ruining all of this and I can't concentrate on the role, and I'm scared I'm gonna lose it if he causes too much chaos. They ultimately set up this ambush at a nightclub, which was a very cool scene in my opinion, and Kevin Bacon's character gets knocked out and then is taken to a junkyard where he is chained to a car and then ultimately gets crushed. I was shocked, I'm gonna tell you that. I thought they were gonna like stop it right as soon as the thing got close to the car and have him talk about who he's working with and who paid him and all this, but no, they just ultimately kill him. This is where the movie starts to fall apart for me, because I feel we just start rushing towards that ending right here. We end up seeing Maxine, for some reason throughout the whole movie, she didn't want to help the police or anything. She just wanted to go forth and just forget about everything, and then she has a moment where she just snaps and says, you know what, I'm gonna stop this stalker once and for all, and she goes to the address where the killings were happening. When she gets there, she discovers that this whole time it was her father who was the stalker and the protesters doing all of this in order to make a movie themselves where they were going to show America how porn and horror are destroying society, and they were going to be the ones that were the righteous ones doing the great work of God, divine intervention, as they say. We ultimately see that the LAPD followed Maxine here, and they came to help her as a shootout ensues between the cult and the LAPD, because it's only two detectives, Michelle Monaghan and Bobby Cannavale. Ultimately, the father tries to escape as the detectives go after him, but the father shoots both of them, and we see both of them die. I don't know, Michelle Monaghan's death just screamed parody to me when it happened, but that's a whole other video right there. Ultimately, Maxine catches up to her father, who has now been shot as well and looks to be on their last breath. And they both say the infamous line, I will not accept a life I do not deserve, as she shoots her father in the head, guts everywhere, which was a pretty cool moment, I will say. We then see that Maxine goes on to be in the Puritan 2. We find out, of course, prior to that, that Molly Bennett was killed by Maxine's father, her body in a suitcase. And I don't know, that was just a moment that was like shocking, but it really wasn't. And we see as Maxine tells Elizabeth Bender that she never wants this to end. She has become a star, and that's the end of the film. And that's pretty much it right there. So of course, we had theorized before that Maxine's father could have something to do here, and it was a big thing, especially with the finale of X, because those were the last images we saw that Maxine's father was looking for Maxine, and I was very curious to see how they were going to wrap that story up. Never did I think that this would be the main story here. I feel like a lot of what got lost in the sauce for me is that the protesters that were at the Hollywood studio were some of the ones that were helping Maxine's father, specifically Lorraine's father. I feel like you could have set up more of that here, especially. The man didn't have any lines really, and it just felt like an afterthought. You really had to look closely as well to see that he was Lorraine's father, and I think that was something that was missed opportunity, honestly, to create a bit more tension throughout the film as to whether or not he might be the stalker himself. And I thought it was interesting too that Kevin Bacon's character this whole time was helping the stalker, and he got close enough to Maxine in order to be able to get her at times, and I was curious how that never came to be, even though he knew what the stalker was doing. Like, he knew the stalker was killing people. He would see him covered in blood. But overall, I thought that this film was great in its first two acts. I think the first one's really strong, where you have this mystery about who done it and all that. I think that the father also was a good way to be introduced, was a little bit earlier, and then it's like, oh man, the father's out there looking for Maxine. But I think that the way it was just introduced at the end, like it was some grand reveal, it just made us feel like, I don't know, that didn't feel as grand as I thought think you wanted it to be, especially with the editing. I think that also the fact that they didn't try to ask Kevin Bacon either, who was doing all of this, kind of felt weird, because for the most part, Maxine seemed calculated in everything they were doing. And I understand it's the PTSD and everything happening here, but it still just felt very rushed by the end of it, especially with that reveal and especially the end shootout. Overall, though, we have a film where we see Maxine gets what she wants, as she tells the father he has helped her go to this next level. I'm pretty sure because of her whole story that can now be told in a movie or whatever. And it seems that Maxine is ultimately happy now with everything. Even though there was a ton of blood and carnage that it took to get here, you can kind of sort of parallel that to how much sacrifice it takes to become a star in today's society and to be at the top. You need to really let go of a lot of things. Now, albeit here, Maxine's family is dead and Maxine's friends are dead, and every other coworker in the past she's had as well is dead. So it kind of goes like, yeah, she sacrificed all of that to go there. If you want to see it in a deeper level, I don't think you have to see it in a deeper level. It's just a good horror film about slashers, horror, and cinema love for sure, from Ty West and Mia Goth. And I don't know if it's just me hyping it up for so many months about me feeling a little bit disappointed by the ending. People love the ending. Some people I know personally also really love this film and would consider it almost the best film out of the trilogy. But for me, it's the lowest in the trilogy. I definitely do want to see where Ty West would want to take the X universe, as he said. But I'm curious also how this movie does as it releases to more audiences, because to me, I feel like this one's going to be a mixed bag for sure, just from what I'm seeing already online. But let me know your thoughts and your opinions on Maxine, its ending. Did you think this was a worthy ending to the trilogy and for Maxine Minx? We also find out that Maxine Minx is not her real name. It's actually Maxine Miller, and she had changed it when she was trying to escape the church, but her father ultimately tracked her down. But let me know your thoughts, your opinions. The father just wanted to ultimately showcase that horror corrupts, that Hollywood is a weird cult vibe that is destroying our society, and he was going to make a film where he killed people to prove that, which just goes to show just how things are today, where they use this violence to prove that things are causing violence, but they use violence as well. Kind of interesting, right? More deep dives into the X trilogy, because I think as a whole, it's something that I do want to discuss and its themes throughout and what it's trying to say about society. So stay tuned for that. But let me know your thoughts and opinions. Follow for more on the things you love. We're on the road to 35,000 subscribers. We just hit 31,000. So 4,000 to go for 35,000. That's our goal for July. I think we can hit that. Tons of videos coming, more long legs, more X trilogy, all of that, as well as more films that we're going to be watching. We do got a ton of reviews coming out as well for Ghostlight, Humanist Vampire next week, or probably this weekend, so I can fill in some stuff there. So stay tuned. But as always, stay safe, stay positive.